You know that feeling when you're stressed out and suddenly you've got a headache or your stomach is in knots, or how your energy just seems to ebb and flow with the world around you? Well, that very idea that everything is connected is the absolute core of Kampo, traditional Japanese medicine. We're not talking about just fighting off symptoms. We're talking about restoring a deep, fundamental sense of balance and harmony inside you.
And this quote just says it all, doesn't it? The human body as an organic whole. In Kampo, there's no real wall between your mind and your body. They're totally intertwined. What you think, what you feel, it physically impacts your health. And the whole system, you, is in a constant conversation with nature itself.
All right, so here's our game plan for this explainer. We're going to start with that big picture holistic view. Then we'll dive into the actual building blocks of life, the 3 essentials. We'll look at what happens when things go wrong with them, then meet the 5 key Zang organs that run the whole show. And finally, we'll see how it all comes together in a diagnosis.
Okay, first up, this idea of balance. You know, in Kampo, health isn't some finish line you cross and you're done. It's way more like a dance. A constant, active process of keeping your balance as life throws all kinds of stuff at you.
I want you to think of it like a symphony orchestra. You've got your key instruments, those are the 3 essential substances, and they create the actual music of your life. And then you have your conductors, the 5 Zang organs, directing everything. When they're all in sync, what you get is this beautiful symphony we call health. But if even one musician is out of tune, the whole system can start to sound pretty rough.
So, let's actually meet the musicians in this orchestra. These are the 3 essential substances, basically the fundamental materials and energies that make you, you. First up, we've got qi. This is the spark, the vital energy that gets everything moving. Then there's ketsu, which we call blood. It's the rich, nourishing stuff that carries that qi all around and keeps our tissues healthy. And finally, we have sui, which represents all the other important fluids in the body. Think sweat, saliva, you name it, that keep things lubricated and running smoothly.
Now, what's so cool is that qi isn't just some vague life force. Oh no, it has a very specific job description with 5 key roles. It's the engine that pushes our circulation. It's the furnace that warms our body. It's the shield that defends us from getting sick. It's the container that consolidates our fluids so they don't leak out. And it's the factory that transforms food into more qi. I mean, it literally does everything.
So, that's how it's supposed to work. But what happens when these building blocks get out of whack? Well, that's when we start to see problems or pathologies. And these aren't really diseases in the way we usually think of them. They're more like patterns that show up when a substance is either running low or it's just plain stuck.
Let's start with qi. If you don't have enough of it, that's called a deficiency, or kikyo. Just think of that deep, dragging fatigue you just can't shake. Now, if your qi gets stuck somewhere, usually from stress, that's stagnation, or kitai. This causes that weird, moving, bloating kind of discomfort. And if your qi starts flowing the wrong way, like upwards, that's counterflow, or ki-gyaku, which can show up as a nagging cough or nausea. And you see the exact same logic with our blood. You can have too little of it, that's blood deficiency or ketsukyo. When that happens, your mind and body aren't getting nourished, leading to things like dizziness or trouble sleeping, or your blood can get stuck in a traffic jam. That's blood stasis or oketsu, and it causes a totally different kind of problem, a sharp stabbing pain that stays in one spot.
And yep, it's the same story for our body fluids. Not having enough leads to dryness, dry skin, dry mouth, always feeling thirsty. But when those fluids stop moving and start to pool and stagnate, they turn into something called Phlegm-Fluid, or ton, that can cause puffiness, edema, dizziness, and even nausea. 2 very different issues from the same core substance. Okay, so we've got our substances. Now let's meet their managers, the 5 Zang organs. And this is so important to get. We're not just talking about the physical organs you'd see on an anatomy chart. Think of these as broad, functional systems that are in charge of regulating our qi, blood, and fluids.
Kicking us off is the liver, or kan. In Kampo, the liver's like the army general, or maybe a traffic controller. Its main job is to make sure qi flows smoothly and freely through your entire body. It's the master of flow.
So it makes perfect sense what happens when the traffic controller has a bad day, right? When the liver's function gets messed up, you get a qi traffic jam. And that leads to emotional pileups, like getting irritable or angry really easily, that feeling of tightness in your ribs, and even headaches.
Now, right at the center of this whole kingdom is the heart, or shin. This is considered the emperor of the body. It doesn't just pump blood. It also houses our consciousness, our mind, our awareness, what Kampo calls the spirit. And this is exactly why a problem with the heart system doesn't just cause physical symptoms.
It directly rattles the emperor in his palace. It disturbs the mind, leading straight to things like palpitations, anxiety, and being unable to sleep. It's a perfect example of how mind and body are just one thing here.
Let's move on to the spleen, or high. Now, this organ system is basically the body's kitchen and power plant all in one. Its main job is to take the food and drink we consume and transform it into all the qi and blood that fuel our entire existence. It's literally where our day-to-day energy comes from.
So when the spleen gets weak, digestion is the first thing to go. You lose your appetite, you get diarrhea, but it has another fascinating job. It's also responsible for holding things up and in place. So if it gets really weak, it can lead to things like organ prolapse, or even bleeding issues, because it can't do its job of holding the blood inside the vessels properly.
Okay, now for our connection to the outside world. That's the lung, or high. Its primary role, obviously, is breathing. But it also acts like a superfine misting system, spreading qi and fluids all over the body, especially to the skin, which is our first line of defense against the outside world.
When this system has a problem, it's pretty intuitive. You get coughing, asthma, shortness of breath. But because it also handles that misting function and our defenses, a weakness here can also lead to swelling or a weak immune system. That's why some people seem to catch every single cold that goes around.
And finally, we come to the absolute foundation of our life and health, the kidney, or Jin. I want you to think of the kidney system as your body's deep cycle battery pack. It stores our essence, which is this deep constitutional energy we inherit that governs our growth, our development, and our reproduction. And this is why kidney dysfunction in Kampo looks a lot like what we call the aging process. That weakness in the lower back and knees, ringing in the ears, hearing loss, problems with urination, they're all classic signs that the body's fundamental battery is just running a little low on juice.
So here's the big takeaway. Kampo diagnosis is all about being a detective. It's about putting all of these puzzle pieces together, the state of the substances, the function of the organs, to see the overall pattern of disharmony. It's about figuring out the story the body is trying to tell. And that whole story, that pattern, is called the show. The goal isn't to just play whack-a-mole with symptoms. It's to understand the root pattern, the shook, and gently nudge the entire system back towards that dynamic balance. And this leaves us with a really powerful question, doesn't it? In our modern world, with all these complex chronic conditions that don't seem to have easy answers, how might this way of thinking, this pattern-based view of health, give us a totally new way to approach healing?